Most people never build wealth, and here's the brutal truth. It's not because they don't earn enough. It's because nobody ever sat them down and told them the actual rules of the game. The banks know them, the hedge funds know them, and for some reason, they'd love for you to stay confused. Today, that ends. I'm going to walk you through exactly how to start investing in 2026. Not the watered-down, just open a Roth IRA version you've heard 100 times, but the real framework, the one that explains why certain moves work, when they work, and what most beginner guides are too scared to tell you. And I'll save the most important concept for the end, one that quietly separates people who build lasting wealth from people who stay broke while technically doing everything right. Stick with me. Welcome to Finance Deconstructed. Let's get into it. Why most people invest wrong from day one. Before a single dollar goes anywhere, you need to understand one foundational truth. Investing is not savings. These are two entirely different mechanisms, and confusing them is the #1 reason people either lose money or fail to grow it. Savings is capital preservation. You store money, it stays relatively stable, and it's there when you need it. Investing is capital deployment. You put money to work in assets that carry risk, and in exchange for that risk, the market compensates you with return over time. Here's where it gets important. In 2026, with U.S. inflation running historically above the 2% Federal Reserve target, money sitting idle in a standard savings account is losing purchasing power in real terms. The FDIC reports the national average savings account rate as of early 2026 sits well below inflation. That means if you're not investing, you're quietly getting poorer, not dramatically, but steadily, every single year. This is not meant to scare you into reckless decisions. It's meant to reframe your starting mindset. Investing is no longer optional. It is the financial survival mechanism of the modern era. Step 1. Build your financial floor first. Now, every credible financial framework, from the CFA curriculum to Vanguard's investor education materials, agrees on this. You do not invest before you have a financial floor. What is a financial floor? 3 things. First, an emergency fund, 3 to 6 months of living expenses held in a high-yield savings account, not a checking account, not your mattress. In 2026, several online banks and credit unions are offering high-yield savings rates that, while still trailing inflation in some periods, are meaningfully better than traditional banks. This money is not an investment, it is insurance. It keeps a job loss, a medical bill, or a car repair from forcing you to liquidate your investments at the worst possible time. Second, high-interest debt elimination. If you carry credit card debt at 20 to 29% APR, which is where most U.S. credit card rates currently sit following the Federal Reserve's rate environment, paying that down is the equivalent of earning a guaranteed 20 to 29% return. No legitimate investment in history has consistently delivered that. Pay it down aggressively before you invest a dollar. Third, a basic budget structure. You need to know your monthly cash flow, what comes in and what goes out, because investing works on surplus. If you're unclear on your surplus, you'll either underinvest or overinvest and panic sell when an emergency hits. Neither outcome builds wealth. Only after these 3 pillars are in place does it make sense to put money into the market. Step 2. Understand what you're actually buying. When most people say, "I want to invest," they mean they want to buy stocks, but they don't actually understand what a stock is, and this gap is dangerous. A stock is a fractional ownership stake in a real company. When you buy 1 share of a publicly traded company, you are legally a part owner of that business. You are entitled to a proportional claim on its earnings and assets. That's it. It sounds simple because it is simple, but most people emotionally treat stocks like lottery tickets rather than business ownership stakes, and that's why they buy high in euphoria and sell low in panic. Bonds, on the other hand, are debt instruments. When you buy a bond, whether it's a U.S. Treasury bond or a corporate bond, you are lending money to an entity in exchange for periodic interest payments and the return of your principal at maturity. Bonds are generally lower risk than stocks, lower return, and serve a stabilizing function in a portfolio. Real estate investment trusts, or REITs, allow you to invest in income-producing real estate, office buildings, apartments, industrial warehouses, through publicly traded shares without being a landlord. And then there are funds. Mutual funds and ETFs, exchange-traded funds, pool money from thousands of investors to buy a basket of assets. This pooling is the key to something we'll get to in a moment: diversification. Understanding what you're buying before you click invest is not optional. It's the foundation of every rational investing decision you'll ever make. Step 3. The single most powerful force in all of investing. Albert Einstein reportedly called it the eighth wonder of the world. Whether or not he actually said it, the math absolutely supports the claim. I'm talking about compound interest, or more precisely in the context of equity investing, compound growth. Here's how it works. You invest $5,000. It earns 10% return, which, for context, is roughly the historical average annual return of the S&P 500 over the past century, including dividends and adjusted for reinvestment, according to data from NYU Stern's Damodaran database. At the end of year 1, you have $5,500. You don't withdraw that $500 gain. It stays invested. Next year, 10% is earned on $5,500, not $5,000. Your gain is now $550. The year after, 10% on $6,050, and so on. This doesn't sound revolutionary in year 1 or 2, but extend it 30 years, and that initial $5,000 becomes approximately $87,000 without adding another single dollar. Add consistent monthly contributions, and the numbers become life-changing. The variable that makes compounding work is time, not timing the market, time in the market. A 25-year-old who starts investing today has a structural advantage over a 45-year-old who waits to figure it out first that cannot be replicated with higher contributions alone. The math is unforgiving on this point. This is also why the financial industry's dirty little secret is that most actively managed funds underperform the market over long periods. According to S&P Global's SPIVA report, over a 15-year period, more than 85% of actively managed large-cap U.S. equity funds underperform the S&P 500 index, meaning the professionals with Bloomberg terminals, massive research teams, and decades of experience cannot consistently beat simply owning the market. This is the founding argument for passive index investing, and for most beginners in 2026, it is the most evidence-backed starting strategy available. Step 4. The account you use matters more than you think. This is where most beginner guides fail you. They talk about what to invest in, but skip over where to hold it. And the where is actually a legal tax structure that can save you tens of thousands of dollars over a lifetime. In the United States, there are 3 primary account types that every beginner needs to know. The Roth IRA is the single best account available to most young or moderate income investors. You contribute after-tax dollars, your money grows tax-free, and qualified withdrawals in retirement are completely tax-free. In 2026, the IRS contribution limit for a Roth IRA sits at $7,000 per year for those under 50, with income phase-out limits beginning around $146,000 for single filers. The long-run tax advantage of a Roth IRA, particularly for someone investing over decades, is enormous. The traditional IRA and 401k operate on the opposite principle. Contributions are made pre-tax, reducing your taxable income today, and withdrawals in retirement are taxed as ordinary income. The 401k, offered through employers, often includes an employer match, which is free money, and the single highest guaranteed return available to any investor. If your employer matches 4% of your contributions and you're not contributing at least 4%, you are leaving compensation on the table. The taxable brokerage account has no contribution limits and no withdrawal restrictions, but no special tax treatment either. It serves as the overflow vehicle once tax-advantaged accounts are maxed out. The general priority order most fee-only fiduciary financial planners recommend: contribute to your 401k up to the employer match, max your Roth IRA, max your 401k, then use taxable brokerage for additional investing. Step 5. What to actually buy in 2026. Now we get to the specific question everyone actually wants answered. For most beginners, the empirically strongest starting point is low-cost, broad market index funds, or ETFs. These instruments track an index, a preset list of securities, and simply hold everything in it. There's no active manager making decisions, which keeps fees extremely low. The fee on a fund is called its expense ratio. For passive index funds from providers like Vanguard, Fidelity, or Schwab, expense ratios are often between 0.03% and 0.20% annually. For actively managed funds, they can run 1% or higher. Over 30 years, that 0.8% difference in fees compounds into a shocking difference in your final portfolio value. 3 categories of funds that give most beginners complete global diversification. A total U.S. market index fund covering large, mid, and small-cap American companies gives you exposure to thousands of U.S. businesses across every sector in a single fund. A total international index fund gives you exposure to developed and emerging markets outside the U.S., reducing geographic concentration risk. A total U.S. bond market index fund provides the stabilizing lower risk component of a portfolio. The allocation between these 3 depends on your time horizon and risk tolerance. A commonly cited heuristic, though a simplified one, is to subtract your age from 110 to find your target stock allocation percentage. A 25-year-old might hold 85% equities and 15% bonds. A 60-year-old might shift to 50-50. Your actual allocation should account for your personal circumstances, income stability, and the emotional capacity to hold through drawdowns. One rule that overrides all others: do not sell in a downturn unless your life circumstances have fundamentally changed. Markets correct. Bear markets happen. Since 1928, the S&P 500 has experienced dozens of corrections exceeding 10% and at least 9 bear markets of 20% or more. And yet, the long-run trajectory has been consistently upward. The investors who failed were not those who picked the wrong index fund. They were the ones who panic sold at the bottom and locked in permanent losses. Step 6. The discipline layer. The piece nobody teaches. Here is the concept I promised to save for the end. It is not a hot stock tip, it's not a sector rotation strategy, and it's not what the algorithm rewards, which is probably why you've never heard it explained this cleanly. The concept is behavioral alpha. Alpha, in finance, refers to returns above and beyond the market benchmark. Behavioral alpha is the excess return you earn or preserve simply by managing your own psychology better than the average investor. Research from institutions like Dalbar, which conducts annual studies on investor behavior, has consistently shown that the average equity mutual fund investor significantly underperforms the very funds they invest in. The gap in 2023 data from Dalbar's QAIB report showed individual investor returns trailing the S&P 500 by multiple percentage points over a 20-year period, not because they chose bad funds, but because they bought and sold at the wrong times. The market doesn't beat most investors. Investors beat themselves. Behavioral alpha is built through 3 practices: dollar cost averaging, Investing a fixed dollar amount at regular intervals, regardless of market conditions, which naturally results in buying more shares when prices are low and fewer when prices are high. Automating contributions, removing the decision entirely from your emotional brain by setting recurring transfers the day after your paycheck lands, and deliberate non-action, the practiced discipline of opening your brokerage app during a market crash, seeing red, and closing it without touching anything. Warren Buffett has said that the stock market is a device for transferring money from the impatient to the patient. That statement is backed by a century of empirical data. In a world where financial media profits from your anxiety, algorithms amplify fear, and social media creates a constant illusion of people making fast money, your competitive advantage as an individual investor is not intelligence, it's stillness. Putting it all together. So, here's the complete framework condensed. Build your financial floor. Emergency fund, eliminate high-interest debt, understand your cash flow. Understand what you're buying. Stocks or ownership, bonds or loans, funds are diversified pools. Let time and compounding do the heavy lifting. Start now with whatever you have. Use tax-advantaged accounts first, Roth IRA, 401k with employer match. Buy low-cost, diversified index funds. Keep your expense ratio below 0.20%. And above all else, master your behavior. Automate, don't react, stay the course. Investing in 2026 is not complicated. It has been made to seem complicated because complexity sells. Courses, advisors, proprietary platforms, premium newsletters. The evidence, however, points consistently towards simplicity, consistency, and time. This channel, Finance Deconstructed, exists to peel back every layer of financial complexity until what's underneath is plain, actionable, and yours to use. If this video gave you something real, subscribe. Not for the algorithm, because the next video might be the one that changes how you see money forever. Now go build something.